My name is Emily, and last weekend I decided to do some renovations in my apartment, specifically in the kitchen. After taking out almost all the furniture, I cleaned up a bit and immediately started looking for someone to do the renovation. In front of me lay a bunch of ads, but one caught my attention almost immediately. Although I put it aside at first, I eventually came back to it. Calling the number listed, I heard a pleasant young voice on the other end. The guy offered a reasonable price and agreed to come the next morning. I even got up early, excited at the prospect of finally renovating my kitchen and perhaps finding a new companion. Since my divorce 2 years ago, I'd been living alone. My ex-husband, Jake, wanted kids, and when it turned out I couldn't get pregnant, he found someone else. It was a painful time for me, and after the breakup I felt lost and devastated. Now, at 35, I was trying to find peace in my life, trying to focus on myself and enjoy the little things. I have spent so much time rebuilding my life, focusing on my career and trying to regain my self-esteem. Despite the loneliness that sometimes crept up, I managed to create a comfortable life for myself, albeit a bit secluded. I spent my days working and my evenings reading books, watching movies, or taking long walks in the park. When Noah the repairman arrived, the doorbell rang, and when I opened the door, he dumped a pile of tools right into the hallway and asked me to show him the scope of work. Noah was young and handsome, and though I didn't want to admit it, I liked him immediately. There was something about his confident demeanor and the way his eyes sparkled when he smiled that drew me to him. His presence seemed to fill the entire apartment, and I found myself paying unusually close attention to how I looked, suddenly wishing I had chosen a more appropriate outfit. I led him into the kitchen and then went to watch TV in the living room, trying to keep myself occupied and not think about him too much. I decided to spend my vacation at home for once, since I was often away on business trips and rarely had time to enjoy my apartment. I was looking for something romantic, nice and soothing to just relax, and somehow I came across a romantic scene in a movie. The sound was louder than the other channels, and the girl was making romantic noises, and the guy too. I frantically tried to turn the volume down, embarrassed at what was playing. Noah ran into the room with widened eyes, and I fiddled with the remote, trying to adjust the volume while realizing that my silk robe had pulled up, exposing more than I had intended. I saw surprise and a hint of something else in his eyes as he just stood there, nervously dropping the hammer to the floor and muttering something, then quickly withdrew. My heart was racing and I felt a mixture of embarrassment and excitement. After I finally managed to turn off the TV, I sat and thought about what had just happened. My face flushed, and I couldn't shake the feeling of arousal over the way Noah was looking at me. I knew I shouldn't think of him that way, but it had been so long since I'd felt that kind of spark in a relationship with someone. It was an undeniable connection, and it excited and scared me at the same time. I tried to focus on other things, but my thoughts kept coming back to Noah and the way he was looking at me. It was like some part of me wanted to test the boundaries, to see if there was more between us. Then Noah called out to me, asking for help. I joined him in the kitchen, where he was trying to remove a curtain rod. I climbed onto a stool to help him, grasped the ledge with my hands, and again my robe shifted. Noah's gaze met mine, and I could see he was agitated. I felt his hand touch my leg and my body tingled. He didn't pull away, and neither did I. It had been so long since anyone had touched me like that. The feel of his warm hand on my skin sent goosebumps running through my body, and I realized that something was happening between us that neither of us could ignore. Letting go of the ledge, I climbed down, looked him straight in the eyes, and kissed him. The kiss was electric, and I felt the tension between us disappear as we gave ourselves over to the moment. I took Noah's hand and led him to my room where he showed me what he could do. He was good, really good. There was a sense of urgency in the way we touched each other that had been building up since the moment we met. He put his arms around me afterward, and we hugged for what seemed like an eternity. It was soothing, and I felt a closeness I hadn't felt in a very long time. We lay cuddled together and talked about all sorts of things: favorite movies, dreams, and even fears. Maybe this is the beginning of something new, I thought, smiling to myself. Maybe this was what I needed, a fresh start with someone who would make me feel alive again. The next morning, I woke up to the noise Noah was making in the kitchen. He was making coffee, and the smell of it filled the apartment, making me smile. I got up, threw on my robe, and joined him. He greeted me with a warm smile, and for a moment I thought we were a couple, just enjoying a quiet morning together. We talked, sipping coffee, and I found myself opening up to him more than I had to anyone in years. He listened, really listened, and I could see that he cared. It was strange how quickly I felt connected to him, but it felt right. As we sat at the kitchen table, the conversation turned to our past relationships. I started telling Noah about Jake, about the heartbreak and emptiness I felt after the divorce. I told him about my fears of never finding love again, and he listened to me without judgment. He shared his experiences too, telling me about a relationship that ended badly and how he moved to the city to make a fresh start. It felt good to talk about it with someone who understood me, and it made me feel even closer to him. We spent the rest of the day together, Noah doing kitchen remodeling and me staying close by, helping him when needed and enjoying his presence. At one point we took a break and went for a walk around the neighborhood. The weather was beautiful, and we walked through the park, laughing and talking like old friends. We found a bench near a small pond and sat down watching the ducks swim by. Noah held out his hand to me, and I let him, feeling warmth spill over me. It was such a simple gesture, but it meant so much. As the sun began to set, we walked back to my apartment. Noah continued his work, and I couldn't help but admire how dedicated he was. He was experienced, efficient, and had a knack for making things seem easy. I imagined what it would be like to see him around more often, to have someone to share days with, someone to come home to. The thought was both comforting and exhilarating at the same time. As Noah gathered his tools that day, I was sad. I didn't want him to leave. He must have noticed this because he paused and looked at me, his eyes soft. "I'll be back tomorrow to finish the job," he said with a smile, and my heart eased. Perhaps this was just the beginning, and I was ready to see where it would lead. In the evening, after Noah left, I mentally replayed the day's events. I couldn't stop smiling, and for the first time in a long time I felt hopeful about the future. I didn't know what would happen between Noah and me, but I was willing to take a risk, to open myself up to the possibility of loving again. Life had been hard, but maybe it had finally given me a second chance at happiness. The next day Noah returned as promised. He brought fresh pastries from a nearby bakery, and we shared them over a cup of coffee before he went back to work. We seemed to have gotten into a familiar rhythm, and I liked it. I watched him work, admiring his focus and determination. When he took a break, we sat together on the floor, eating sandwiches and talking about our plans for the future. Noah told me about his dream of starting his own business, and I wanted to be a part of that dream, to support him and encourage him. By the time the kitchen was finished, it looked amazing. Noah had done an incredible job, and I couldn't have been happier with the outcome. But more than that, I was grateful for the connection that had been made between us. As he gathered his instruments for the last time, I felt sadness, but also excitement. It wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. Noah looked at me, his eyes filled with warmth, and I realized he felt the same way. "So shall we have dinner tonight?" he asked with a reassuring smile on his face. I nodded, feeling my heart bursting with happiness. "I'd love to," I replied. And when he leaned in to kiss me, I realized that this was the beginning of something beautiful, something real. A new chapter in my life that I was ready to accept with open arms.